Welcome, Katie.
Thank
And tell us about TechWomen. Tell us about
you.
yourself. Tell us why you're so awesome.
That's so sweet of you. And Tara, we love Technovation, and the work that you do is so invaluable, and we're thrilled to be
Yeah, we
partners,
have to give air
albeit
hugs.
informally. Exactly. But in short, hi everyone, I'm Katie Z. I direct the TechWomen program. For those of you that are not aware, TechWomen is an initiative of the US Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So that acronym is ECA, so I might sprinkle that in here and there. But the program is administered by IIE, the Institute of International Education, since the program's inception in 2011. And in short, the mission of TechWomen is to empower, connect, support the next generation of women leaders in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we work with women from Africa, Central and South Asia, and the Middle East. And we work to provide them access and opportunity, those things that are so needed to advance their careers, pursue their dreams, and also inspire women and girls in their own communities. Basically, through mentorship and exchange, TechWomen strengthens our participants' professional capacity, works to increase mutual understanding between key networks of professionals, and ultimately to expand girls' interest in STEM careers by exposing them to an amazing network of female role models. So that's TechWomen in short, and we've been working since 2011. We had 38 emerging leaders from the Middle East and North Africa back in 2011, and today we boast 828 alumni from 22 countries, and of course I would be remiss if I didn't mention here our TechWomen mentor community. And the TechWomen mentors are the women and men who volunteer literally hundreds of hours of their time to support the TechWomen participants before, during, and after their program experience. And all told, we boast nearly 1,000 past and present mentors. And to each and every one, I mean, we're eternally grateful. We can't do the work without them.
So Katie, what does the program look like? So if there's a fellow who has gone through the very rigorous application process, highly competitive,
yes,
and then they come, and pre-COVID, they would come to the US. What does it look like? How long is the program? What are they learning? I know their days are jam-packed.
Absolutely. Yes, the program is only 5 weeks, which is incredible for how much our emerging leader participants accomplish in that short time. And within that 5 weeks, we kind of have 3 major pillars that we're working on with our participants. Cultural exchange is a huge piece. Again, the US Department of State is the full funder and creator of this program, and really kind of engaging in those people-to-people soft diplomacy is really critically important. And so the women are engaged in cultural exchange around, professional development, around arts and food and all sorts of fun stuff. They also have their professional mentorship. And so this is where we pair our emerging leader participants, generally 1-to-1, but sometimes 1-to-2, 1-to-3, 1-to-5, depending on the interest that we have, with a mentor from the Bay Area, so generally in Silicon Valley and San Francisco, from one of the many leading tech companies in the area. And generally, again, pre-COVID, these participants would engage with that host company for 15 days. And what the women do in those host companies is self-defined. So we ask the women right after they're accepted into the program to let us know what are their top 3 learning objectives. And we use that information to match them with a mentor that's best suited to meet those goals. And so we really allow the space for the women to drive their own goals and figure out what will help them succeed most in their careers. The last and third pillar is called the action planning process.
It's a lot of personal matching. It's all
Absolutely.
manual.
All manual. When we're in an office, we have a lot of sticky notes on walls with lots of names and moving them around. And yeah, it's really a lot of personal investment in the process. And we really pride ourselves on making really strong matches. And again, that kind of harkens back to what I said. We boast, nearly 1,000 mentors who have volunteered with us over the years. They themselves have great networks. And so we're really able to leverage the power of that network to find great professional matches for our participants each and every year. So we're really proud of that. And the last pillar that I'll talk about is action planning. And that's where we have the women who are from the same country. So typically we have about 5 women per country in each program year, and they work together to identify an issue or a challenge in their own communities that they feel compelled to find a solution for. And so through a series of workshops, they work through design thinking, working together, teamwork. They also learn how to build budgets. What does it look like to build a sustainable
It's like the
solution?
Technovation experience.
Exactly, exactly. Well, and Tara, as you know, you've been such a big contributor to our programming during this action planning process because you have such a great sustainable model that we really want to make sure our participants know about. And at the end, they get to pitch that action plan to a panel of judges for seed grant funding. So we keep them very busy.
Yep. I've seen this firsthand, and I'm always amazed how much jet lag there is and jam-packed days. But that's why
Yeah.
this is so memorable, right?
Yes.
So, envisioning that like really amazing global experience coming together, how was it like to take it all online?
It was, I cannot pretend that it wasn't challenging, but it was also exciting in a lot of ways where we really got to think about those core components of our program, break it down, and really figure out what the opportunities were. As we've already mentioned, just in the last couple of minutes of talking, the program is jam-packed. So one of the things that we decided to do right away when taking it virtual was to spread things out. So instead of having the women participate in a program that literally took up 12 to 15 hours a day, every day for 5 weeks.
And you can't process that much.
Exactly. We said, okay, let's see what we could do in 4 hours a week for 8 months. And so that's kind of what we took.
But then your team doesn't get downtime.
No, that's true. We learned that probably a little later than we probably should have, but it was also great because we got to know this cohort really well. In a normal course of things, we're selecting our participants in usually May, and we bring them here in September, and they're gone by the end of October or November. This time we got to select them in June, start working with us in September, and we just wrapped up programming last month. Yeah. So great opportunities as well.
Friends for life.
Exactly. So really, again, we really did try to focus on the opportunities, but as I mentioned, it definitely was not without its challenges, and COVID-19 impacted all of our participants' personal and professional lives. TechWomen participants are all accomplished, successful professionals, but many also have family obligations that made juggling everything quite difficult. Some of our participants contracted COVID-19, which was scary and disruptive to their lives and their program experience. It also made the program a little bit harder to fit into their lives because many of our program countries were experiencing their own lockdowns. Simple things like being able to access financial paperwork that we were asking for because the banks were closed. So these sorts of things, while maybe small when I talk about it like this, add up to quite a lot. But despite all of these challenges related to things like access to technology, competing priorities of family and work, I have to say the 2020-2021 cohort of TechWomen Emerging Leaders stepped up. They had the invaluable support of hundreds of volunteer mentors here in the US, and they truly achieved something great. So as I mentioned before, we do an action planning process, and each country team came up with an innovative solution in their home countries. We offered everyone seed grant funding this year, and 16 of the 21 teams accepted that funding. And so they're working on implementing those projects right now. So we have teams working on—
So that's very important, right? Like I think so many of these communities in ours, we found the lack of resources, right?
Yeah.
So I think being able to put direct financial support is key.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were really excited for the opportunity to be able to provide that.
Yeah, I can't imagine like such a long-term program commitment and trying to deal with all the health stresses and everything else, right? So what surprised you?
What surprised me? That is a great question. It's not really a surprise, but I was really impressed
Mm.
by the dedication and commitment the members of this community continually have to investing in themselves and their careers. As I mentioned, our participants, our alumni are juggling so much. They're juggling work, they're juggling family, they're juggling their own volunteer work with their communities, and often, political, economical, societal challenges that are actively working against them achieving their goals. Yet they continue to
Mm.
persevere and make a difference. And so it's, again, I'm not surprised because I know our community, but I was able to be impressed anew almost every single day with stories of
Inspired.
success. Yes, absolutely.
Like, I think that's what I learned. Like, so many of the Technovation chapter ambassadors are also tech women,
Yeah,
and how much they did to rally their communities, provide technology for the
absolutely.
girls. We would not have survived without their leadership. But
Yeah,
I was like, where did you get the energy from?
I
Right?
know.
Like, we never went, my family and I, we were never going through any type of COVID like crisis, but and we have internet, and I can't imagine taking on so much more responsibility.
I know. It's amazing.
So there's a higher purpose, which is very inspiring.
Yeah,
So what do you think education organizations, in my mind, Tech Women is somewhat of an education organization as
yeah,
well, and it's filling a very big gap because there's so many organizations that focus on the K through 12 space. There are
mhm,
very few organizations like Tech Women that are focusing on this very, very critical space where women who are professionals need continuing development, and especially in
mhm,
tech, right?
yeah,
Um, so what do you think we need to keep in mind as we map out a strategy? And I'm not going to say post-COVID because we are very much in COVID, even though the
yes,
US feels like that, but the world doesn't.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, something that I feel like is really important, and I'm sure many of the leading educational organizations, including Technovation, are well in tune to, is just listening to your constituents and
Mm.
hearing what it is they have currently, what they need to succeed, and being prepared to fill the gap between those two, between A and B for them. And something that I was reminded of many times is that as an individual living in the U.S., my reality is so different, and what is possible here is not possible for everyone. And that feels like such a small thing, but when when I had opportunities to step back and think about our participants in countries like Turkmenistan or our participants in Zimbabwe, it's like, okay, like, what do you have? How can I help you succeed? And really listening to them, and we were able to do things like providing a small technology stipend. Like, all they needed was better internet, and so we
Mm.
were able to ask and find that solution. And so I think that's just going to be continually being important, especially as COVID just has this unequal effect on the countries. The vaccines are going to roll out in an unequal way. People are continually going to get sick. Governments are going to continually react differently. And so just continuing to listen, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that continuing to listen sort of implies in your strategy is that it's not like a top-down scale model,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like where so many times funders kind of ask you, well, how are you going to scale this, right? And the scale automatically means you're providing one solution for all,
Hmm.
which is so not what this requires, right?
Right.
And I think the listening piece basically means on the back end, it's increasing cost of implementation, right? Because your
Yep.
personalization. But without that, we're not going to get. We're still going to be the issue of where women are bearing the brunt of the
Absolutely.
pandemic, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So to switch gears,
Sure.
what was one story that inspired you, and you're like, oh, this is why I do what I do?
There are so many, so many. One great story that I wanted to share is about one of our fellows from Tunisia. Um, she has a great organization called Skills Club, all about equipping, you know, children in her community in Tunisia with STEM skills. She herself is a scientist. At the beginning of COVID, she said, oh my gosh, I need to help my community in a huge way. She moved her family into the headquarters of her organization and 3D printed over 1,000 face shields for local doctors in the area. And just that sheer commitment to just doing something so tangible, that she got all that done in April of last year, and that story has kept me going all year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really impressive.
That's
And so,
amazing.
yeah, our fellows,
Wow.
our alumni are incredible.
Yeah.
And she is one shining example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the downstream effects of Tech Women are so powerful, and you see it in Technovation, which is on the
Yeah,
K through 12 stream, right? Like,
absolutely.
and so if anybody wants to say, like, okay, show me an example where women are giving back to their communities and driving change, I mean, this is it.
This is it.
It's an absolutely great informal collaboration.
Yes.
So one of the things, I mean, I think pre-COVID, and I've attended these events. I haven't attended any one of their cultural events, although I've heard they're unforgettable. And I'm sure it's sort of like the Olympics, right? Like where you have such a sense of being part of the world, where
Yeah.
there's so many different people. So how when you were saying you were trying to look at the essence of what's working and then try to transfer and recreate it online, how did you create that sense of community online when you're all like
Yeah.
little squares?
Yes, it was definitely a challenge, and we had to try a few different things to find something that really clicked. And as simple as it seems, you know, we have a community on Facebook, so we try to keep that an engaging space. We had an online learning platform where individuals were able to access resources, but also create chat dialogues, which frankly didn't work too well. And so what we ended up doing
Language
is,
is so there's no common
oh yeah,
language, right?
oh
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But also just, you know, no one wants to just be chatting with somebody in this space. So we actually found just something very simple, which was to offer, you know, offer space, offer a virtual space. So this was Zoom in our case, where we offered, you know, at least once a week, sometimes more, where emerging leaders, participants, mentors, fellows could come and just be together. We would have suggested topics of discussion, but otherwise, you know, they were able to talk with whatever want. And it was never enforced. It was never, you know, mandatory for our participants to show up, but again, just kind of providing that space of openness for them to be able to come together and discuss seemed to work the best. I think that there's ways, you know, if we're looking at virtual programming for the next year or so, that we'll be able to really fine tune that. But keeping things simple, and again, I keep saying it, but just providing the space. People just want to be able to speak with one another about their experiences and learn. And so that was a great way to do it.
Yeah, a shared
Yeah.
experience, right? Like
Yeah.
without any agenda.
Exactly.
I guess, did you have any kind of celebration come together, and like how did you incorporate some of the elements of what you have in
Yeah.
person?
Yeah, we did. We had an end of program celebration, which was I think it turned out really well, if I do say so myself. We had some exciting speakers, including past participants of the program, giving kind of inspirational words. We really, you know, in Tech Women in general, but this year in particular, we really wanted to hear from our participants and mentors. So we provided a space for, you know, a couple individuals to share what they had learned with the community. And we had an online awards ceremony, which was really fun. And so just doing simple things like that. We had everyone create, you know, let us know a word that they would use to describe Tech Women, and we made a word cloud. So just very simple things. It definitely, you know, it's not the same as being in person. For those of you that may know the community, Tech Women loves a dance party. That was much, you know, much harder to accomplish this year. But we did our best, and yeah, I was pleased.
Yeah, I think those are all things that we are struggling with, right? And I think we will, when the pandemic hit, and I was reading some of the projections, 2023, I'm like, no way, 2023, right?
I know.
But now I'm like, okay. Anyway, we will go on
brace yourself.
to better topics of discussion here. So Katie, I'm sure you have such a diverse group of friends and people that you meet through Tech Women. What is one book that has really moved you?
I was chuckling when I was thinking about this answer. I have a 3.5-year-old, so I've barely read a book in the last couple of years.
Children's books, so many people
Exactly.
here talk about, I love them, and you're like, oh, that really speaks to me.
Oh, good, because that's what I chose. If anyone hasn't read Charlotte's Web by
It
E.B.
makes me
White,
cry.
it makes me cry, but it's such a
Yeah,
simple book, and at its heart,
yeah,
it's about
yeah,
compassion, it's
yeah,
about friendship, and it's
yeah.
such a lovely reminder to be kind.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally. And actually, he's written another very beautiful book that I didn't know about, Trumpeter Swan.
Oh, I
He,
don't know that one either.
that one is, it's the story of a swan. It's mute.
Oh,
It's a beautiful story. So
I
same
will have
thing,
to check it out.
teaches you a lot of empathy and kindness.
Yes.
And that's what we need, right?
Yes.
So last question, Katie, what
Sure.
should we be working on with intention? This is so much. There's an endless to-do
Yeah.
list.
There's
If
so
you
many
take
things.
one thing.
Well, then I think if I can't give a big list, I do think that the one thing that I try to work on with intention every day is extending grace and forgiveness to others, but also to myself. This year has been full of challenges, as we've been kind of alluding throughout our conversation here. The challenges are not over. And yeah, I just think that we need to forgive ourselves, forgive others, and assume positive intent. And we'll get through this.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, no point taking it all too seriously.
Yeah.
One of my board members posted this on Mother's Day, and she said, if you're not going to worry about something in 5 years, don't waste a minute worrying about it
Ooh,
right now. And I
that's
was
a good
like,
one.
that is awesome advice. And so extend the same thing to people, right? Like
Yes.
maybe they had a rough day.
Exactly. Everyone's had a
So
rough year.
yeah, yeah. So Katie, yeah, thank you for doing this,
Thanks.
and I can't wait to see how more closely we can work together.
Yes.
And the extent of the Tech Women community is so inspiring, and we feel the work and we benefit from their leadership on a daily basis. And I think last week we had Mutriba
Oh,
from Turkmenistan, and she was just sharing how the incredible leadership she had sort of executed in her community, and we
yeah.
just hear these stories over and over again. So the more we can do to build up these
Yes.
women together, I think is I'm happy to be given that opportunity.
Oh my gosh.
So Katie, thank you so much. Good luck. And I hope I get to see Tech Women in person again sometime, because I miss that sense of one world, right?
Yes.
And for all of you tuning in, thank you. Next week, we will have Bruce Au from the Hong Kong Jockey Club talking about Cool Think, which is, I think, is one of the largest computer science programs in the world that is deployed in the K through 12. So awesome lessons from there. And I think they're also implementing AI programs there. So that'll be a fun conversation. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.